sort of the pandemic right at the very start, like around July 2020, I really had a sense in my heart that, God was telling me that I needed to get in shape. I needed more energy for what was coming. And at that time, I didn't know that we were going to launch Flourishing. I didn't know, actually, in the last 3-4 years, a lot has gone on. We've launched a church. We've launched several businesses. We've done a lot of things that probably I needed more energy to do, even though I've always been a high energy guy. So, at first I was like, oh, that's mean. God, I don't need to lose weight. Like, I look okay. But then I looked at myself and I thought, actually, I don't like the way I look. But also I knew that if God was telling me I need more energy, then I should probably listen, because, energy is the stuff of life. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Flourishing Podcast. We're so excited that you're joining us here today. My name is Ep.3, and I'm here with
Shay.
Shay, nice to see you, Shay. What are you up to today?
Well, just doing a full day of podcasting.
A full day of podcasting, eh? Sounds pretty boring. And how are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing okay.
Good.
I mean, it could be a lot worse. So what are we going to talk about today?
We are going to talk about physical health.
Physical health.
Yes.
Okay. So I guess from a flourishing perspective, what we really want to make clear is that we want to talk about physical health from the perspective of how can you flourish in your physical health. Now, I'm not a personal trainer, not a doctor. I'm not a nutritional expert. I don't know if you are. You might be.
Definitely not. No.
Okay. Dr. Shay. Dr. Shay would be a nice touch, though, wouldn't it?
Yes.
That would be very cool. So we're not trying to come to you today trying to say you must do this or you must do that. I think actually our perspective is a lot more about how can you flourish in your health. And I don't think that has a lot to do with a certain look or a certain appearance. I think it has a lot more to do with how you feel and, of course, your overall level of health. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I definitely agree. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So if we can get really personal, personal, not really personal, would you describe yourself as a healthy person?
I would say yes.
Okay. Yeah. And tell us a little bit about that, your physical health journey.
So I think when it comes to physical health, I often like to think of everybody has a starting point. And for me, it was when I was 21. And my sister was helping me get back into shape or get into shape, I guess. And so prior to that, a few years leading up to that, I was drinking about 5 to 6 days a week. I was smoking cigarettes. I was doing a lot of unhealthy things. And so my confidence was quite low, but I got a gym membership and I started with the gym. And I remember I would smoke a cigarette before I got in the gym and after, and I would run in between. And I actually remember people looking at me as they're like walking into the gym and I'm sitting outside smoking a cigarette, like kind of laughing at me and whatever, I just like, what, I'm here. Yes. And then 6 months later, I smoked my last cigarette.
Okay.
And I just got really passionate about fitness, about what I was putting into my body. And now I can't even smell a cigarette without actually feeling nauseated. So It's crazy. And, but I think for myself, I did go down a bit of a journey in my 20s where I got a little obsessive. I definitely used running as a way to replace the habit of smoking. But just like anything good, like working out and things, it can be unhealthy if we use it in a bad way or we use it excessively. And so I just got overly concerned about my outward appearance, my looks. And so I may have looked good, quote unquote, to people, but mentally I was suffering for many years in my 20s. And I would work out sometimes 2 hours a day. And that was my life, basically. I was very cautious. I would exert myself in exercises, which would then lead me to binge eating at night. And I went through a few years of that and nobody really knew about it. And so it was a bit of a journey, but I would say now in my 30s, I have come to a much healthier place. Cool. So I do workouts, but I usually do it when I can, 30 minutes a day. I have a son, so sometimes I just chase him and that's my workout. But I'm a lot more focused on my mental health And so, yes, I definitely believe that physical health helps with our mental health. I notice a difference when I am not running for like a week or so or doing any kind of activity that I start to feel my mental health decline. There's just something about moving your body that does wonders to my brain. I also am not going to lie. I still like to keep myself fit, but I also like to keep myself fit for the purpose of carrying my son, playing with my son, knowing that 20 years down the road, these little habits that I've instilled will pay off because I can hopefully live a longer life. And so I've definitely kind of went on the pendulum swing, but now thankfully I am in a happy middle. So
happy middle is a beautiful place to be.
Yeah.
So what is that, sort of that journey, the impact had on like sort of the food that you eat?
Yeah, so I think the journey, I used to eat a lot of junk food. I used to eat out quite a bit.
What was your biggest weakness, junk food wise?
Probably burgers.
Burgers.
Like, the burgers that aren't burgers, like the McDonald's burgers.
Oh, I love me a good burger too.
Yeah. And chocolate. What I've learned is like, not right now because we're doing the 75 challenge, but I do like a piece of chocolate. And I think it's not about like limiting myself. Like I can't have this and this and this. Sure. What I learned is that there's actually all these other things that I can have. Yeah. And so when I had this restrictive mindset, I would always fall back into binge eating or I'd fall back into these bad habits because it wasn't sustainable. Right. But realizing like there's healthy cookies out there that you can make.
Yep,
and
totally.
Switching it up so I'm still being able to have things that I enjoy really has helped me a lot. So
yeah, that's huge, right? I mean, if you define eating healthy as always eating food that you hate, then it's just not going to last, right?
Yes.
And so that's cool. So then now that you're really feeling healthy, what has that done for you in terms of mental health? What's the shift?
So the shift probably would be, I've dealt with a bit of, depression in my past and things like that. And I think just for me, that is I don't have depression right now, but I think that my mental health is a battle that I fight every day. So these are just things that, consistent workouts, just like they're not extreme, but just things where I could move my body and what I'm ingesting in my body. I feel like overall my mental health is a lot more clear. I do feel happier and it's just night and day difference from 12 years ago. So
nice.
Yeah. And I know you have had quite the journey as well. And so why don't you share a little bit about that?
Well, I was 900 pounds and, I'm just joking. So I shared a bit about this before that I think I've always been relatively healthy, like in terms of indicators, et cetera. But I worked out like every day, but I wasn't really eating well. So when I was in, sort of the pandemic right at the very start, like around July 2020, I really had a sense in my heart that, God was telling me that I needed to get in shape. I needed more energy for what was coming. And at that time, I didn't know that we were going to launch Flourishing. I didn't know, actually, in the last 3-4 years, a lot has gone on. We've launched a church. We've launched several businesses. We've done a lot of things that probably I needed more energy to do, even though I've always been a high energy guy. So, at first I was like, oh, that's mean. God, I don't need to lose weight. Like I look okay. But then I looked at myself and I thought, actually, I don't like the way I look. But also, I knew that if God was telling me I need more energy, then I should probably listen because, energy is the stuff of life. Like, you don't have energy, you can't do any of the things. And if your business model is built around you being able to work hard and at a high, efficient, high-performing level, then energy is critical. So anyways, I guess like everybody, I had heard about like diet fads and, when people are like, oh, are you keto? Are you, Atkins or like all of these things. I don't have a clue, like paleo. I don't even know sometimes what they're talking about because I just didn't care. But what I found as I went online was somebody told me about this thing called 75 Hard. And, Andy Frisella, I mean, he's a pretty big deal now. He actually's got a great podcast. Go listen to him too, because he's awesome. But, he designed this program where it was this idea of a commitment to 5 things every day for 75 days. And so it wasn't endless. It wasn't like, okay, I got to do this forever. But I knew a guy. It's funny because this guy, we live in Western Canada in a place called Alberta, Calgary. And this guy was in Ontario. And he had posted a couple of pictures about himself. And he was a couple years older than me. And I always thought like I was better than him, I guess, because my business is bigger than his. And I thought, holy crap, like that guy looks a lot better than me. And as a guy, yes, of course, my ego got into it. And so I thought, and so I messaged him. I said, hey man, what'd you do? And he said, well, I did this thing called 75 Hard. You should try it out. And so then I checked out Andy Frisella. And then I said, okay. So I reached out to a bunch of my friends and said, I'm going to do this. Would you like to come along? And a bunch of them, like there's probably 20, 25 of us, and they said, let's do it. And so we did it. And so, you know, I lost like 40 pounds over the 75 days. Wow. I gained probably another 5-8 pounds of muscle. I went in sort of this whole idea of like from like 24% body fat down to where I am now at about 9%. And it was like transformational. And interestingly, like you said, it really helped me understand better my own body. Like I know this is crazy, but like you can live in your body, but not understand it. Yes. I think in some ways, as a man, maybe this is wrong for me to say, but I think because women have more, like there's more things happening in women's bodies, that women are a little more in tune with their bodies because they have to be. I don't think all women. But I know a lot of guys, like they can have all kinds of things going on and then one day they just drop dead of a heart attack and nobody knew it was coming. That seems to happen more to men because men just sort of do things and they don't have like menstrual cycle and kids and things that kind of force them a little bit more to pay attention to their body. Yeah. So it was actually transformational for me because what I found is that there was a whole bunch of foods that I could eat that I love to eat and I don't have to like, you know, order things from Weight Watchers or do crazy things like that. Like I do all my own meal prep. Of course, my wife and I do my own meal planning. I'm really excited about how I eat. And, you know, and I know this is maybe silly to some people and that's okay because we all have our silly things. Yeah. But you know, I just turned 50 and, you know, I had set this little goal for myself to do 100 pull-ups and 100 push-ups in 10 minutes. Before I turned 50, and I'm happy to say, like as recently as like this morning, I did it, and I did it a bunch of times before I turned 50. I videoed it. I'm still a little lame about posting that video. I probably will, but you know why? Like, who cares if you can do pull-ups or push-ups? Or I'm like you, I love to run, but because it's not about that. I think it's about actually finding the exercises that nourish your body, but also your soul. You know, like for me, people always say like, why do you run every day? And I'm like, well, it's for my mental health. Like I actually need the dopamine hit. I need the endorphins. And I also just need to clear my head. Like my brain gets stuffed with all kinds of shit and trauma and stress and self-loathing and insecurity. And then just like the highs and the lows of having 3 kids and running businesses. And so I have to put myself in a situation where I can do that and find some emotional release, mental release. And then I also found from an energetic perspective that some foods were really hurting me energy-wise. Like it was like, I mean, I love ice cream. I do love burgers. By the way, I still eat burgers, but right now I'm on 75 Hard, so I can't do the full burger. It's like a bunless burger, right? And things like that. But the idea is, what are the foods that actually give me a mental acuity, that also improve me emotionally?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, food is different for every single person. So I know for myself, going on the journey of making sure I'm getting enough protein, I work with Abe, so I see what he eats on a daily basis, and he has a lot of smoothies. It's just simple, and I'm like, wow, that's awesome. And so I tried to do that, and you know what? It doesn't work for me. It didn't work for my face or my digestion. It just did not work, and I just thought, okay, I need to find something that works for me. And I love what Abe said about listening to your body. I know it is intuitive for some women, but I know even for myself, it wasn't up until a couple years ago that I actually started listening. I remember one time I was sitting at work and I just started crying out of nowhere because I was so exhausted. I was working myself to like exhaustion and I wasn't listening and I just kept pushing and then I just couldn't stop crying. So that was a big wake up call of, okay, like I need to look at, like, listen to what my body is asking. Does it need more rest today? Does it need better food? And it's a bit of a journey. And so, you know, like if I need to sleep in, then I will sleep in because that's what my body is asking for me. So, yeah.
Yeah. You know, it's funny because I actually think that like any relationship, like if you disrespect a person in a relationship for long enough, at a certain point, the relationship's like, they're just going to shut down and that's it. It's done. I think people have a pretty, some people have a pretty large degree of grace and empathy, but if you just constantly disrespect them, it's going to shut down. And I actually think our bodies are like that. Like you have a relationship with your body and it's the only one you've got. Like, you know, even if you get a bunch of plastic surgery, you still have the same body. And at the end of the day, like, are you respecting that body? Are you listening to that body? Because your body will talk to you and tell you, hey, this is what I need. And if you listen, then I think it's good. You have a great relationship with your body. In the same way, any relationship is about mutual listening. But if you stop listening to your body will shut down at a certain point. And that could be like a hardcore tragedy. But I also think it could just come down to real chronic fatigue. I think like not as a diagnosis, but just as something that people can experience just constantly. I'm tired, low levels of immune system. So then you're like vulnerable to every little flu bug that comes along. Yeah. It could be just that you don't have clear thinking. Like I found, I mean, I love chocolate too. That was probably one of my bigger weaknesses was just not just chocolate, but the amount of sugar I was taking in. And we need sugar, right? Like we actually need glucose in order to function. But I was getting like the white, refined sugar, the kind that actually does a lot more harm than good. So I found when I just took that out of my diet, it's amazing. I still allow myself to have some sweet things, but it's like I think a lot clearer. I actually have way more energy. So.
And what would you say to people? Because, you know, I've heard a lot of talk on physical health and, I know for myself before, you know, getting into working out and doing all this stuff, it was just annoying to hear it because I didn't know where to start. It felt overwhelming. So what would you say to someone that's just starting out?
You know, I would say dive into your why, your reason why. And why I say that is because the world is full of diet fads and people trying to sell you on something. And that's actually what I loved about 75 Hard. I think Andy Frisella is brilliant because it's just a program that you don't have to buy. And so you're not sitting there questioning the motives of the person who's telling you to do this. He's just like, get your shit together. Here's a program for doing it. You don't have to pay me. Just follow these steps. And getting fit is hard. Like don't expect it to be easy. And I think that's why the why is so important. But then when you've decided that why, what's your reason? And it could be, I love what you said, like 20 years from now, maybe your son will have kids of his own, 25 years, who knows? And maybe you want to be able to pick those kids up and you want to be fit and healthy as a grandma at that point, totally. Right?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, of course, like that's your why. And that's enough to say, how does that shape my choices today? So I think if you're doing it just because you want a certain figure or you want to have a certain look, I would not disrespect that. I think that's great, but I don't know it's enough, right? So you might want to just tether it to something that might be more connected to a deeper sort of thing so that when it gets easy, you don't fall off the wagon.
Yeah. And I think it's great. If you guys didn't know, Abe does a challenge every year, the 75-day challenge. So it's a little bit different than 75 Hard. It's you picking 3 things that you're committing to for your mind, your spirit, and your physical health. So I did this last year, and I've actually been wanting to do this for so many years. And my why to push me to do it was I wanted more energy. And I was so bloated. And so I kind of fell off the wagon of
She wasn't that bloated, but.
Well, I was a little bit, and I wasn't fitting in my jeans, and it was really painful actually. And so I was wondering, okay, how do I heal this? Because it was an inward thing.
Right.
And so I learned, I cut out all the sugar. I did all of that. It was incredibly hard. We started whatever day 1 was. I didn't start until day 3 because I had this mental battle in my mind that was like, you can't do it, blah, blah, blah. But what I learned a lot about myself. I learned that I can do it. And I learned that your body, after a certain amount of time, will adjust to a new diet.
Yes.
And but it takes that uncomfortableness of those few weeks. And then I learned that I was taking sleeping aids for over 10 years.
Okay.
And what I learned was that stop eating sugar before bed and you will not. And I actually, completely got off sleep aids because I was on a more consistent sleep schedule. So I was a bit sporadic. So I would just pick a time really early in the evening and I would go to bed. I would wake up early and I didn't feel groggy because I found what made me groggy in the morning was actually the sleep aids I was taking the night before.
Totally.
And so just having like a couple little like changes in my routine changed everything for me. But it took a community of people in that group to like help and support me through that. So
no, I couldn't agree more. And I love like the community in that group. I mean, you can just go to Facebook and just look up what is it? The High Performance Challenge, I think is the name of the group. And obviously we're not trying to sell you on it. It's not like a money thing by any means, but it is about a community, right? And, it's kind of cool because people are in there and they're like, I had a bad day today. I didn't do any of the things. And you can see people just jumping on. How I describe it is people are like, well, is it 75 hard? I'm like, actually, no, it's 75 soft, right? Because there's some of us who are like, I'm doing the full 75 hard again because I just love it for me every year. It's been a reset. This is my 4th time. But at the end of the day, you have to start where you are. The worst thing is waiting until you think you'll have a perfect attempt to try, because you'll probably then never try. So it's like beginning. And, the sugar thing is really interesting. Like we have to realize like, as much as like big pharma kind of has a bit of an agenda, big food has an agenda too. And I think a lot of people don't realize, like not a conspiracy theory. It's like really simple. I mean, I have an MBA. People do the things that's going to make them money. And so they discovered in the 50s and the 40s and the 30s that if you just put sugar in things, even things that you don't need it, like bread as an example, we will sell more products. And so what did they do? They did that. And now we have kids and, generations of people who are growing up in that environment. And we got like crazy levels of diabetes all over the planet. We got crazy levels, like actually obesity is the number one health issue in a lot of countries and a lot of places. And you think, well, man, like, why is that? It's not like we're gluttons. Like I see very few people who are like crazily overeating. That's not it, but it's just the quality of what we're taking in has wired us so that we need that. And so when I went into 75 hard, I cut myself off sugar. Now like when I'm not on 75 hard, I have a free day and things like that. But it was so cool to break almost like the addiction to sugar, if I can call it that. Like, it was like, I don't actually need this the way I think I do. And then I started to get my sugar, because again, we still need glucose, but it was like from fruit and from natural sources. And so way better, right?
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, a lot better.
So I didn't really know, Shay, when you were doing some binging. But, interesting, I just wanted to get your thoughts on this before we kind of close off the podcast. Like sometimes for people, the whole relationship with food can be quite emotional.
Yep.
And I don't want to assume that was the case for you, but was there something emotionally as a connection there? And if so, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I think it was about 3 years ago now, maybe 3.5, where, I've had a bit of a faith in my life for 12 years now, but it was very surface level, wasn't really committed to it. And so there was a change in my life, right? Like I stopped drinking and I stopped, damaging my body with substance abuse. However, it was almost like I changed it to other things. So I changed it to over-exercise. I changed the outlet to binge eating. So, the exercise looked healthy, But there was a deeper reason why I was over exercising. And so there wasn't actually true freedom there. So about 3.5 years ago, I really just dug deep. I know what we talked about in one of the other episodes was digging deep into, past traumas and hurts and like why I wasn't emotionally eating. And so, I just had to do a lot of healing. And as I did that, naturally, it just kind of went away. So,
yeah. It's really interesting, the emotional relationship we can have with food. I think it's the same with alcohol. Like people, my dad drank himself to death. So, and I've worked with alcoholics and folks who, have had substance abuse for many years. And I always have a lot of empathy for that because it's never like, oh, I love the taste of this stuff. Like, nobody starts out liking the taste of alcohol, almost nobody. Even me, when I smoked my first joint, it's not like, oh, I liked it. It's that you're trying to meet a need for something else. Yeah. Like we need connection. We need to feel whole. We need to feel peace and calm. And food can do that for you. And again, I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that's a good thing. I just think it's about being really intentional about how we make those choices because, I want to be that guy who's like in their 90s and still healthy. I was a pastor for 12 years. And it's so funny. I'm actually writing an article right now. It always takes me the longest to figure out the title. And it's called I Remember His Grip. And I remember I was 23 years old, I guess, at the time. And I was just a young pastor, crazy story. They asked me to go see this guy who was in his 90s and he was living on his farm. This was in Nova Scotia, in Kemptown. Did you ever hear of Kemptown, Nova Scotia? And he was living by himself, but he wasn't going to church. He was very healthy. And his family's like, can you go and tell him to stop driving his tractor every day because we're afraid he's going to kill himself on that tractor. And I remember meeting him. And if I can take your hand for a second, when I met him, like the guy's grip was so strong. Like I was in my early 20s and the squeeze this guy had, it was like it hurt me, right? Yeah. And that's the title of my article. I Remember His Grip. And then I was listening to this doctor the other day and said that one of the greatest indicators of longevity is grip strength because it's the byproduct of so many other systems in your body, from your cardiovascular system to your circulatory system to your muscle strength to your skeletal system, all of those things coming together and going right. And I say all that to say that I think to myself, man, like that guy was old, he was happy, he was strong, and he was constantly active. And I just say that to say, funny thing is he did end up dying on his tractor of all things. I shouldn't be laughing, but it's actually a cool story. I'm not laughing at the fact that he passed away, but it's kind of funny because he did not have an accident. He didn't topple his tractor. I think one day he just thought, I'm just going to go out and today's my day and I'm taking off. And so they found him on his tractor and his head was just down like this. And he had been passed out for a couple of hours and that was it for him. But I bet you he died happy because that's what he wanted to do. But his health was the thing that allowed him to do that. You would not go on a tractor in your 90s if you're not healthy enough to do that. And I think how many people don't get to sort of write their own ticket. They don't get to sort of say like, I want to go out like this. Well, that gentleman, and I still remember his name, he wrote his own ticket. He did it the way he wanted to do it, but it's because he kept himself healthy. And he wasn't a bodybuilder, he was a farmer. So I think it was that he kept, like you said at the start of this, he was just doing constant movement. He wasn't sitting there just watching TV all day, I'm retired now. He kept his routines going. Yeah. And I think as a result of that, there he was. And, there was tears at his funeral. I did his funeral, but they weren't like tragic tears of regret. They were just happy tears remembering, who this guy was. And everybody was so happy that he went out the way he wanted to. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I was just thinking, I definitely do have a lot of empathy for people who are figuring this out, who they want to get healthy. And I understand like just the journey, because it is a journey. But I think like the number one thing I can think of that's helped me is it's just so cliche, but just hear me out. Like be kind to yourself because my weeks with, like I'm a mom and sometimes I don't get my workouts in, and I used to be so mad at myself. Some days I'm really stressed and maybe I should eat more than I do eat more than I should. But you know what? Like, it's not about perfection. It's just a journey, and that we get back up the next day and it's a new day. It's a fresh day, and we get to start over. So the whole point is progression.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's not really a cliche. Be kind to yourself,
Yes.
right? So, be kind to yourself with your cliches. So, hey guys, if you want to check that out, I mean, you can just go to the High Performance Challenge it's a Facebook group. So you can just search that in Facebook and, connect with us. You could also go to thehighperformancechallenge.com. And again, there's nothing that's going to be sold to you. The idea is just getting you into a community where you can be supported, because it's not a journey that any of us should take alone. So thanks for tuning in. Thanks for your great wisdom today, Shay.
Thank you.
And thanks for tuning into the Flourish podcast. Please subscribe, leave us a really positive review, and we'll see you in our next episode. Take care.